Protests have been held in the city of Minneapolis after a 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good was shot dead during an operation by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. This is the city's police chief, Brian O'Hara, describing events yesterday. And just to warn you, you'll be able to hear the sound of gunshots from the video of the incident.
The preliminary information that we have indicates that this woman was in her vehicle and was blocking the roadway on Portland Avenue, midway between 33rd Street and 34th Street in the city. At some point, a federal law enforcement officer approached her on foot, and the vehicle began to drive off. At least 2 shots were fired.
Well, hundreds of ICE agents have been deployed to Minneapolis as part of the White House's crackdown on illegal immigration. American officials have provided conflicting accounts of what happens. Here's the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem.
ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle and attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots.
Well, this has been challenged by others, including Minneapolis' Democratic Mayor Jacob Frey, who used an expletive to urge ICE agents to leave his city. Let's speak now to Tom Rivers, former ABC News correspondent. Hello, Tom.
Hey, good morning, Hugo. Afternoon, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, narrowly afternoon. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Look, have we learned any more about this, I guess we must call it an altercation, how this began, what happened?
Again, roll the clock back. I spent about 25 years in Minneapolis. I know the area in South Minneapolis very, very well. And I think you've kind of framed it well. The emotions are running high on both sides in Minneapolis right now. And again, the rhetoric is ramped up. The mayor of Minneapolis, who is beholden to the Somali bloc vote, he's come out with some very, very strong words. So has the mayor of St. Paul, Kristi Noem, used a different phrase. She said on the other side of the argument that Renee Nicole Good was, if you will, a domestic terrorist. So, yes, we are where we are. Very, very polarized, and we'll see how this plays out. There's now a state and a federal investigation into this particular incident. FBI on the federal side, and Governor Walz said that the state would be looking at it as well. So 2 separate investigations.
Yeah, look, stick with us. We're going to try and get Tom on a slightly better line, just to give you a bit more background there. We are talking about this story about a woman who was shot dead after she allegedly tried to run over immigration officers in Minneapolis, causing protests and debate over whether the agents acted in self-defense or not. There's a video of this incident, and it's led to various interpretations. Many people think it appears to show a nice officer shooting through the window with little prompting. Others say that there may have been other things happening around the other side of the car that we couldn't quite see. We've got Tom Rivers back now. Hello, Tom. Thanks for being back with us.
Back with you, Hugo.
We're trying to understand a little bit more about the context of Minneapolis and how all this plays out in Minneapolis. You spoke before about the city's Democratic mayor being beholden to the Somali bloc vote. What do you mean by that?
There's about 90,000 in Minneapolis itself. A lot of the tower blocks on the west bank of the University of Minnesota, Cedar West, full of Somalis, allegations of vote harvesting going into areas where they don't even do voting checking anymore. You just say, how many people are in this flat? And they say, I don't know, 10 or 12, and they give them 10 or 12 supposedly ballots, and they come back, and guess what? They all go DFL. When the vote comes out. So it's part of the quote-unquote investigation now into fraud and corruption. That is the base of what all of this has to do in the area.
But just to be clear, Tom, sorry, Tom, just to be clear, that's not what ICE are doing there. ICE are there ostensibly to deport illegal immigrants. They're not there to crack down on the Somali population of U.S. citizens.
No, but they're looking into allegations. Federal investigators have gotten into the DOJ, into Minneapolis now, looking at allegations of, if you will, gaming the system for billions upon billions of dollars under the watch of Governor Tim Walz. There have been, over the past day, the House Oversight Committee in Washington has talked to a number of individuals, including Minnesota Representative Marion Rarick, saying that over 1,000 whistleblowers have come forward in the Minnesota Department of Human Services to say, look, they said something's fishy here with daycare centers that don't have any kids in them.
I understood, Tom. I understand that background. But how does this relate to ICE? Because that's not what ICE are there to investigate or enforce.
ICE is to get to the Somalis that have allegedly committed crimes deported out of the country. So if you follow the money, which you seem to have a difficulty with, you follow the money, you see who's doing what, and potentially if anyone is found to be doing illegal things, ICE comes in and kicks them out of the country.
If they're not American citizens.
If they're not American citizens,
in which case they're not voting. Anyway,
if they're up to illegality.
I understand. I understand. Look, again, just for a little bit more context here, Minneapolis is a sanctuary city. Some of our listeners may not quite understand what that means. Explain that to us.
Well, by definition, the governor says it is not a sanctuary city, but they get a lot of benefits. You can be there, and you can get if you're not a citizen, you can still get a driver's license. There are programs where you can get all kinds of things. You can go to the University of Minnesota, tuition free. Statistically, the Somali community in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 54% are on food stamps compared to 7% of the general Minnesota population. 73% are on Medicaid compared to 18% for the general population. 81% in total are getting some kind of welfare benefits. Right. And the taxpayers are fed up.
Okay.
In my former state, yeah.
Tom, look, finally, we've seen protests at the scene already. What happened? A woman was shot dead through the windscreen of her car. It happened not so far away from where George Floyd was killed. That, of course, sparked enormous protests. Mm-hmm. What do you expect is going to happen now? Are there going to be huge protests, and could they spread across the USA?
There will be some protests, but there are also an equal number of angry taxpayers in the state who say, look, there is, again, the backdrop of corruption and fraud in the state. They want that cleaned up. So, yes, there's two sides to this particular story, and watch it as it unfolds. And it is a basic confrontation between state officials in the form of the governor on down and federal officials in the form of ICE on down. And push will come to shove. We'll see how this plays out.
Do you think there's any chance of prosecution of the officer in question?
Again, as I say, that'll be, the bottom line is they'll be checked out. And as I say, two investigations we know of, one state, one federal, will be looking at this. Could be a possibility. Yes, indeed. But again, you've seen the footage, you look at it different angles, you can draw different conclusions. So kind of hold back on that. We'll see exactly what the official reports have to say.
Tom Rivers, former ABC News correspondent, thank you very much indeed.